The Galactic Council had watched humanity for exactly 47 cycles before they made their decision. The Terrans were a young species, barely 200 years into their space age, and the Council believed they would be easy to control. They had seen the small human colonies scattered across a dozen worlds. They had counted the modest fleet of ships that protected those worlds. They had calculated the population numbers and the industrial output. By every measurement the Council used, humanity was weak. Ambassador Zethrix of the Valorian Empire stood before the Great Assembly and spoke with confidence that would later haunt him. He told the gathered representatives that the human territory would make an excellent buffer zone against the Outer Rim threats. He explained that the Terrans had shown no significant military advancement in decades. He assured everyone that a simple show of force would bring them into compliance. The Council voted unanimously to issue their demands. The ultimatum was delivered to Earth on what humans called Tuesday morning. The Valorian diplomatic vessel entered the Sol system with an escort of 12 warships. They broadcast their message to every human world simultaneously. Humanity would surrender 60% of their territory. They would pay tribute in minerals and manufactured goods. They would provide workers for Valorian mining operations. Failure to comply would result in the complete destruction of their civilization. The humans asked for 1 week to consider the terms. The Valorians laughed at this request but granted it. They assumed the Terrans needed time to accept their fate. They assumed the humans were gathering their leaders to discuss surrender. They assumed wrong about everything. On the first day, something strange happened across human space. Civilian traffic stopped completely. Every commercial vessel, every transport ship, every private craft returned to the nearest port and went dark. The Valorian observers noted this with amusement. They believed the humans were already preparing to flee. On the second day, the Valorian sensors detected unusual activity on Earth. Massive structures that had appeared to be mountains began to move. The observers realized with growing unease that these were not natural formations. They were camouflaged facilities, and they were opening. On the third day, ships began to emerge. Not the small patrol vessels the Council had counted. Not the modest cruisers they had observed. These were warships of a design never seen before. They were massive, bristling with weapons, and they launched in numbers that made the Valorian commanders check their instruments repeatedly. Ambassador Zethrix received the first report with disbelief. He demanded confirmation. The numbers could not be correct. The humans were supposed to have a fleet of perhaps 300 vessels. The reports now showed 3,000 emerging from Earth alone, and more were coming from Mars, from the asteroid belt, from hidden shipyards scattered throughout the system. On the fourth day, the human response arrived. It was not a surrender. It was not a negotiation. It was a single transmission broadcast to every species in the galaxy. The message was simple. It contained only facts and figures. It listed the true size of the Terran military. It detailed the weapons they possessed. It explained what humanity had been hiding and why. The galaxy learned that humans had been preparing for war since the day they first detected alien life. They had studied every species from the shadows. They had analyzed every conflict, every battle, every war fought in known space. They had learned from all of it, and they had built accordingly. The transmission revealed that humanity maintained 17 separate fleets, each larger than the entire Valorian armada. It showed that every human world had been fortified in ways that were invisible to standard scans. It explained that the mountains on Earth, the ones that had opened, were part of a defensive network that spanned the entire planet. The humans had buried their true strength so deep that not even the most advanced sensors could find it. On the fifth day, the Valorian diplomatic vessel found itself surrounded. The 12 escort warships that had seemed so intimidating now looked like toys beside the Terran battleships. The human admiral who appeared on their screens was calm and polite. She thanked them for waiting and informed them that humanity had considered their terms carefully. The answer was no. The Valorian commander demanded to speak with someone who had authority. The admiral smiled and explained that she had complete authority. She commanded the Sole Defense Fleet, which was the smallest of the 17. She assured him that her superiors were busy preparing the others for deployment. The ambassador asked what humanity intended to do. The admiral told him they intended to demonstrate why the ultimatum had been a mistake. She gave the Valorian ships 1 hour to leave the system. After that, she could not guarantee their safety. The Valorians fled. They jumped to faster than light speed and did not stop until they were deep within their own territory. The commander's report to the Empire caused panic at the highest levels. The Emperor himself reviewed the data and could not believe what he was seeing. The Galactic Council reconvened an emergency session. Every representative had received the human transmission. Every species was now aware of what Terra had been hiding. The questions came fast and angry. How had the humans concealed so much? Why had no one detected their true capabilities? What did humanity want? The answers came from an unexpected source. A human ambassador appeared before the council for the first time in 30 years. Her name was Sophia Chan, and she spoke with a quiet intensity that silenced the chamber. She explained that humanity had hidden their strength because they had studied the galaxy carefully. They had seen how the powerful treated the weak. They had watched species conquered and enslaved. They had witnessed civilizations erased for the crime of owning valuable territory. The Terrans had decided long ago that they would never be victims. The council demanded to know if humanity intended to attack. Ambassador Chun shook her head slowly. She told them that humans had no interest in conquest. They had no desire to rule over other species. They simply wanted to be left alone. The massive fleet and hidden weapons existed for one purpose only: defense. But she warned them that the definition of defense was flexible. If any species threatened human worlds, the response would be total. If any empire moved against human colonies, they would face the full weight of Terran military power. And that weight, she assured them, was far greater than what they had seen. The transmission had shown only part of the truth. The 17 fleets were just the active forces. Humanity maintained reserve units that could double that number within weeks. Their industrial capacity could produce warships faster than any species in known space. Their population, spread across dozens of worlds, provided an endless supply of soldiers who would train from childhood in the arts of war. The council members sat in stunned silence. One of them finally asked why humans were like this. Why did they prepare for violence with such dedication? Why did they build weapons when they claimed to want peace? Ambassador Chun's answer echoed through the chamber and would be quoted for centuries afterward. She told them that humanity had learned one lesson above all others. Peace was not given freely. It was purchased with strength. The galaxy was full of predators who took what they wanted from those who could not stop them. Humanity had chosen to become something that could not be taken from. The Valorian Empire withdrew their ultimatum within hours. They issued a formal apology and offered to pay reparations for the insult they had delivered. The Emperor personally signed the document, his hands trembling as he did so. Other empires quickly followed with their own gestures of goodwill. Trade agreements that had been denied to humanity for decades were suddenly available. Territorial disputes that had simmered for years were resolved in humanity's favor. Every species in the galaxy suddenly remembered important reasons why they should be friendly with Terra. The human military did not stand down. The fleets remained active. The hidden shipyards continued their work. The training programs grew even larger. Ambassador Chun had told the truth when she said humanity wanted peace, but the Terrans had learned that the galaxy only respected those who could destroy it. In the years that followed, the balance of power shifted dramatically. Species that had once bullied their neighbors now behaved with caution. Wars became less common because potential aggressors knew that humanity was watching. The Terrans had made it clear that they would not tolerate genocide or slavery or the kind of casual conquest that had defined galactic politics for millennia. Some called it the Pax Terrana. Others called it the Age of Fear. Both names were accurate. Humanity had brought a kind of peace to the galaxy, but it was a peace enforced by the threat of annihilation. Every world knew that somewhere in the darkness, human warships waited. Every leader understood that crossing certain lines would bring those ships to their doorstep. The Galactic Council never fully recovered from the revelation. Their authority had been based on the assumption that they represented the greatest powers in known space. Humanity's unveiling had shattered that assumption completely. The Council continued to meet and debate and pass resolutions, but everyone knew that nothing would happen without human approval. Ambassador Zethrix lived for many years after his failed ultimatum. He spent most of them studying humanity, trying to understand how he had miscalculated so badly. He eventually wrote a book about the experience. The title translated roughly as The Price of Assumptions. In his final chapter, he admitted something that few other aliens were willing to say aloud. He wrote that the galaxy had always underestimated humanity because the Terrans seemed so ordinary. They did not have natural weapons or enhanced senses or exceptional strength. They aged quickly and died easily. By every biological measure, they should have been prey. But humans had something that compensated for every physical weakness. They had the ability to see danger before it arrived and prepare for it obsessively. They could imagine threats that did not yet exist and build defenses against them. They turned fear into fuel and weakness into motivation. The galaxy had seen small human ships and assumed that was all they had. The galaxy had seen modest colonies and assumed that was all they wanted. The galaxy had seen a young species and assumed they were naive. Every assumption had been wrong because humanity had wanted them to be wrong. The Terrans had hidden their strength, not out of fear, but out of strategy. They had waited until someone forced their hand, and then they had revealed just enough to make their point. The 17 fleets were a warning. The hidden weapons were a promise. And the calm confidence of Ambassador Chun was a reminder that humanity had planned for this moment long before it arrived. Every world felt fear that day because they finally understood the truth. Humanity was not a young species stumbling through the galaxy. They were a patient predator who had been watching from the shadows, learning and building and waiting. The day the Valorians delivered their ultimatum was the day humanity decided the waiting was over, and the galaxy would never make the mistake of underestimating them again.